And we are live.
We are. It doesn't say we're live on my screen.
It says
It says
live
we're
on
live.
my screen.
Oh, scary.
Yep, people are
Scary.
joining.
Oh, you can see people joining. Oh, I can't see
I
anything.
love that you can. That's great. It's good. I'm the
Great.
host now.
Okay, great. Because I can't see.
Hi,
Said
Anna
error.
Olsen. Hi, Alex Bailey.
Okay,
ET is here.
on my end it says error going live, but you can confirm that we're live right now.
I confirm that we're live. Dwight Swanson is here. Hi, Dwight.
Hi, everybody.
My cat's
Um,
here. Everyone, while we're waiting, we can just say hello to Luna.
interesting.
Hi,
Well,
Luna.
okay. It says I'm live on Substack in another window.
You sure are.
Oh, there we are. Okay, let's get into it. Hello, Penny Lane.
Hi, Kathleen Lingo.
It's fun to have you back on the Substack. The reason why you're here today is you have a new film coming out. So for those of you who don't know Penny, Penny Lane is a documentary director. She's made 8 features: Confessions of a Good Samaritan, Listening to Kenny G, which is, I think, one of the most popular documentaries of like recent memory. People bring it up all the time. Hail Satan, another amazing hit. And now she's taken on the story of Flacco, who, for those of you that don't remember, was an owl that mysteriously appeared on the corner of Fifth Avenue across the street from Central Park and the Plaza Hotel. And the film is about his journey through the city. And I just want to call out, you made it with producers Gabriel Sedgwick and Nicholas Haas. Did I get his last name right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And with Sandbox Films and, of course, your production company, Spinning Nancy. And the
Yeah.
film's about to be in theaters nationwide. So I wanted to get everyone excited and hopefully go out and see it on the big screen, because it is fun to see on a big screen, which I was able to do.
Yay.
So yeah. So basically, I found the film to be a very interesting it was a very interesting both political commentary and sort of spiritual philosophical film at once. But just to like tee this up, so where the story begins is this owl on the corner, and it's a very New York scene. There's an owl. There's like a pet carrier, and there's NYPD and a crowd of people.
Some police tape.
Yeah, it was like one very like only in New York moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a friend who was right there, right?
Right
Who
there.
immediately told
Yes.
you about it.
Yeah, the first person you hear from in the movie is that friend, Jeremy Workman, who some of you might know, also a documentary filmmaker. And he was turning the corner from leaving a memorial service for the legendary Hollywood producer Ed Pressman. So it's another funny, like, little Hollywood angle. But yeah, he was at Ed Pressman's memorial service. He was leaving. He turned the corner. He saw this giant owl. And I'm sure other people had seen him before that, but we don't know because they didn't take any pictures or tell anyone. So Jeremy kind of discovered Flacco. He texted me right away because he knew that I'm a bird person and a bird lover. Yes, and I was kind of, as they say, immediately obsessed. The cliche, right? The documentary filmmaker. I became obsessed.
It's tricky starting a documentary when nothing has essentially happened. So did you know immediately you wanted to make a doc about it? Or were you like,
No,
this
no,
is
no, no.
interesting, let's see what happens?
No, I mean, right away, we didn't even know where the owl came from. So the
Yeah.
first sort of piece of the story is really just like, who's this owl? Where did they come from? And discovering that he had been at the Central Park Zoo, which was just, 3 blocks north of there.
Right.
And that's where he had lived for about 12 years. He was 13 years old at that point. He was about 12, 13 years. Sorry, he had been at the zoo for about 12 of those years. And someone had broken into the zoo, we came to understand, and cut open the wire around the enclosure and presumably had kind of encouraged Flacco to fly free. We never found out who did that. It was not me. Um, yeah, so at first you're just like, where does this all come from? There's so much intrigue in the image that you just described. And then discovering where he was from, and then sort of, I assumed, as did many people, that he would be recaptured soon. and go back to the zoo. That's what I thought the end of the story would be. And that's not where it ended, luckily for my film, and arguably for Flacco, although really there's some questions there about what was best for this owl in that moment. The zoo set about trying to capture him, and there's a good long section of the film that covers those capture attempts. And the long and the short of it is they were not successful in capturing Flacco. So then Flacco was sort of left on his own to fend for himself in New York City, and that's really the story of the film is what happened to this owl at that point.
So, alongside the owl, this group of random New Yorkers start following him. And that was something I wanted to ask you about because, in this day and age, there's very little, we live in a time of loneliness. People's friends are AI chatbots, online dating. There was something very sweet about this group of people that didn't know each other, came from totally different backgrounds, and all seemed, but then sort of created a community around the owl. And then at the same time, the entire city was tracking it. Social media was on the nightly news. Like, talk to me about what it was like to be there in that moment as people were all sort of coming together and realizing they had this shared interest and then sort of starting to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the appearance of an owl in New York City is always exciting. There are owls in New York. There are sometimes owls in Central Park. They're not there like year round. It's always kind of a big event. This was like that, but times 10,000, because not only was there an owl who appeared in New York City, which is somewhat unusual in the first place, and owls are so special and magical, and they feel like they're emissaries from like another spiritual plane or like the dark side or heaven or whatever, hell, I guess, if you were wanted to go there. So they feel like these magical creatures that kind of connect us to this kind of dark other mystery world. So I love that aspect of it. But as you said, like the community aspect of it was also very major. So as Flacco was kind of exploring New York City, he was going around and being in different places. He had kind of like paparazzi, Kathleen. Like there's really no other better way to put it. I mean, there were just a lot of people who were obsessed with him, who wanted to see him every day, who were concerned about him. They wanted to know he was doing okay. They wanted to know if he was like healthy, if he was like thriving. And there's a lot of people who were, some of them were birders, like people that were already very familiar with Central Park and very familiar with the bird life there. And some of them were just kind of more everyday New Yorkers of all stripes because they were so interested in this story. So, like I said, an owl is already magical, but this owl had a story associated with him. This owl had an outlaw story. It was as if he was kind of like on the lam from the law or something, and he also had this kind of remarkable underdog story of resilience because when he was released from that zoo by whoever did it, which was a very irresponsible, bad idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I just stop you on that for a
Sure.
minute?
Yeah,
Like, was there an investigation? Do they have theories? Like, did somebody
sure.
like an animal rights person do it? Like, what?
I think it's not my theory. Of course, like I have no idea what the police think
Yeah,
happened. I don't know. They didn't talk to me. And the zoo didn't talk to me either. So I don't really know like what the kind of leading theories are. I mean, from my point of view, if it were an animal rights person, I think someone would have claimed it.
yeah,
Um, like if it was an animal rights group, this would have been like a great victory for them because
yeah,
like from their point of view, it would have been like, look what happened because I just wanted to, but I don't know. My theory is more like drunk teenager, like random, like kind of random event because I don't see the logic behind it otherwise. Another
yeah.
theory could be financial because these owls are, widely bought and sold as pets and as,
Oh,
yeah, so they're worth quite a
I
lot
was
of
trying
money
to
as
steal
well.
it.
Someone
Yeah,
could have been trying to steal it and he got loose. But what I was gonna say was just that when he was released, he was barely able to fly, because he had been kept in an enclosure so small that he, like, had never really developed fully his wing muscles, so he could barely fly. The reason he was sitting on that sidewalk for so long that first night was probably because he was exhausted from flying for 2 blocks. That's, like, probably the most flying he'd ever done or had done in a long time. So he could barely fly. He could not hunt. He had never hunted on his own. You don't hunt when you're a zoo animal. They just hand you a frozen rat. So I assumed, and most people assumed, frankly, that he was going to be recaptured. And if he wasn't recaptured, that he was going to die immediately. So the point at which people started to really root for him and really glom onto the story, and the point at which I decided that I would probably start making this film, was after maybe about a month or two, where it was clear that he was not only kind of doing okay, but that he was kind of thriving and he was tapping into his own owliness inside. Like I was like, we are watching a captive zoo animal whose parents were captive zoo animals, whose grandparents were captive zoo animals, like at least a third generation captive owl that's never done any of these owly things. We are watching him learn to be a wild animal. And I just thought, like, what would be more cinematic than that? Like, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity to see something like that happen, like that kind of character transformation, if you want to use narrative terms, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
that was the point at which I was like, we got to start filming because this is so special. Like, this has never happened before. No one's ever seen anything like this.
and the film really works just on the level of like it's a captivating story. It feels like you're watching in real time. But the big questions it raises are so fascinating around animal rights, but also human rights.
Mhm.
So, as you talked about, you see this animal that had been raised in captivity, be able to go out into Central Park and be who he really is and live how he wants to live without anyone trying to protect him or follow any rules. He could just be wild and free, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the consequences of that, there are consequences to being wild and free,
Well,
which you
yeah,
see.
being wild and free in New York City as an any animal, including the human animal, is pretty tough. It's tough here. It's a tough place to live, and it's not
Yeah,
exactly a pristine wilderness for him to live in. You know,
but it also just made me think about, anarchy versus
totally.
dictatorships for like how both animals and humans, there's these well, obviously more humans. We are animals too. Obviously, Homo sapiens have spent like the evolution of our species is really defined by how we've come to make decisions to live in groups for our own survival and the different kind of politics that's emerged from that. So, talk to me a little bit about how Flacco's story sort of echoes a lot of the political issues going on in the city right now about, you know, who should be mayor, how the city should be run. But then another theme that comes out in the film is also about which animals are good and which ones
Mhm.
are bad. Everyone loves the owl while everyone's poisoning the rats. So, which obviously brings up like immigration. So, talk to me about like your sort of like, did you have any kind of political awakening or takeaways about sort of these bigger questions as you were making the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think on a philosophical level, I don't know what it's like to be an owl. I wouldn't want to presume, as I know you wouldn't either. All we can really infer from an animal, because we can't speak with them, is from their behavior. And so, his behavior suggested that when he was given the opportunity to return to the zoo, I mean, I presume, I don't really know because the zoo never spoke to me, but I presume in those rescue efforts, the people that were approaching him to capture him were people that he knew, that were people that cared for him and had handed him food for 13 years. So I think that probably a lot of us would assume that he'd be like, I'm scared. I'm lost. Where am I? I mean, can you imagine like being on the sidewalk surrounded by police lights and buses and police tape and tourists if you had been in a tiny enclosure in a zoo your whole life? Like, I really wanted in the film to take the perspective of the owl as much as I could, even though I had to also comment on the limitations of that. We can only guess. But anyway, his behavior told us he wanted to be free. I understand that an owl does not conceive of the word freedom in the way that we do, okay? I'm not an idiot. However, I do think that animals understand the idea of freedom. I do know that, like, animals don't really like to be confined all that much, usually, even if sometimes they get used to it. It's often a long process of having to habituate them to that. So I do think that animals understand freedom. I do think that animals also understand safety and comfort. And a different owl may very well have been like, I'm scared. I want to go back to the place where people just handed me rats and I knew what was going to happen every day, all day. Could be very much the case that a different owl would have a different personality and would have made that choice. Narratively, to me, it was very interesting to be able to tell a story with an animal as a main character because usually animals don't have a lot of agency, and this animal did. So I was able to have a story where the animal was truly a protagonist, where he made choices, and the story changes based on his choices. And I find that to be political. I find that to be philosophically very rewarding and interesting, even as I always hasten to say that I'm not an owl and I don't pretend to know what an owl wants or thinks. I do think that human beings are animals and that we share, a lot of our physical makeup with even with birds who are not mammals and are much older and more alien than us. Alien birds are way older than we are. Like Flacco's kin have been around for at least 70,000 years, longer than any humans that we would call humans. So anyway, they're very different, but I also think that there's some certain things where in our rush to not anthropomorphize, to commit this terrible sin of anthropomorphizing, we sometimes go too far and assume they're more alien from us than they are, if that makes sense. Like, to me, it makes sense that if, like, a mother is caring for her child, she probably loves that child in some capacity, even if it's not the same exact form that you feel about your child. I presume that an owl with her chick would feel something, somewhere related. So I was kind of thinking about that a lot. The animal rights piece of it obviously is huge, even if I don't, the film is not like an argument about that. Like, it presents
Yeah.
arguments, sort of
Yeah.
lets you decide where you want to land on that. And I think that's super important too. Like, there is an argument here that the human beings who were responsible for Flacco, the ones who like bought him and put him in that enclosure, I mean, there's an argument here that they were completely wrong to abandon him like that. That he was there, like, it's like as if like your cat got loose and you were like, oh, she just wants to be free. I mean, wouldn't you think, no, that cat's my responsibility and I have a responsibility to make sure that cat's okay? So there are, like, arguments about whose responsibility Flacco was ultimately, and, like, I come down on, like, all of ours. I think all of us were responsible for Flacco's, life in every dimension.
Yeah, I mean, I think the film is very much a way to think about human rights versus animal rights. And, there's been documentaries. We did one of these at OpDocs a while back. There are lawyers that argue that animals and should have the same rights as humans. And, especially in the film when people bring up how rats are just everyone's like, great, kill all the rats. And then other types of animals like Flacco or a dog, if you tried to poison them, you'd like go
You'd
to
be
jail. That's
arrested. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, where do you come down on these
And
questions?
arguably, rats are closer to humans than owls. Continue.
Yeah, I know. They're really smart. I'm still pro killing rats, I will say. Even after watching the film but like I'm just curious, like for you, like you're a birder, you like how did making this film and watching the journey of Flacco, did it change any of your thoughts about what rights animals deserve?
I think it just pointed me deeper into the mystery of it. I mean, I think that it's a very difficult question, and I think that this film, I started out with this interest in these topics, and I knew that it was a complicated subject that I was really interested in. And I just thought in the end it was even more complicated because I think, there's another way to think about human animal relationships that's less about what rights do animals deserve vis-a-vis humans and more about what is the human responsibility toward our non-human neighbors, to accept that we have made this earth our dominion, to use the religious language, and we are making decisions every day that impact every other animal on this planet. Every other
Yeah.
animal on this planet. So I think maybe the animal rights discussion, while important, often distracts us from the more important question, which is what is our responsibilities toward those animals? How do we need to think about them? How much do we need to care about them? And I don't think there's like obvious, super clean answers, but I do think that the goal of the film was to get people to ask that question and to like maybe move them one degree in this direction or that direction, or just sort of like think about it a little deeper. Because there is a sort of simple joy to the Flacco story. It was very evident in any like Twitter posts or Instagram posts that you may have seen about it back in the day, or any quick like human interest news story or whatever. Like there's a simple childlike joy to the Flacco story that I didn't want to like disregard. That's part of the film for sure. But I knew it would be a huge failure if it was like some children's book exercise. Like this is like a real serious topic. Or this is a series of real serious topics that deserve like adult contemplation. And it's just a very naughty thing. I don't know that I got new insight into it other than to say, yeah, it's actually even more complicated than I imagined.
Right, because there's so many competing interests.
Correct.
And, an argument about allowing pets and an owl versus animals that are vectors for disease, for example, there's totally different considerations at play.
Right. And also Flacco's like literally an apex predator. I mean, if you had like let a lion loose from the Central Park Zoo, we wouldn't have had the same
Yeah,
conversations. But he
yeah,
is, a dangerous animal in many ways. He wasn't going to hurt a person, but he was,
right.
in theory, there was a big fear that he could start eating other birds. He could start eating
Yeah.
native birds. He could start eating, peregrine falcons. They have been known to prey on peregrine falcons in other parts of the world. So, the rights of this one animal like aren't supposed to like trump all the other species that live here too. So there was a lot of problems with what happened.
Yeah, no, there's so much complexity to it, and I actually watched it with my 12-year-old son, and he immediately brought up how owls are predators.
See?
He
He did.
Yeah, yeah, he was like, "Well, the owl's gonna be fine because it's a predator," and then when you started to raise these questions in the film about, like, Flacco could do damage to sort
What's
of
he
the
gonna eat?
equilibrium
Yeah.
of the ecosystem in Central Park,
Yeah.
it's, like, so fascinating to think about how you know, when we have an ecosystem or a society that's running smoothly, quote unquote, or everyone's subsisting, let's just say that, and then something new comes in to change it, how whether or not we should reflexively push that back or find
Mhm.
ways to come
Mhm.
together and
Right.
continue to survive is such a fundamental question,
It is. And
facing.
also one more thing that I mean, Flacco was not responsible for any of this. Someone
Yeah,
else decided that
yeah.
Flacco was going to fly free. So he as much as I say he had agency and he had choices, he did. But in a world where really the main choices were made for him, like he was making the best of a not ideal situation. So, as much as he was thriving in many ways, the film also explores, particularly in the second half, the limits of that. For example, there came a day where he thought it was time to mate. And he started doing all his mating behaviors that owls do in the wild because he had become a wild animal, but there
Mhm.
are no mates for him. There's no one he's like, off it was so sad. He's off like hooting and hooting and hooting for a female, and he's never going to find one. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking.
I mean, it also made me think about, like, how we all have sort of a part of our nature that we suppress or mold to fit in with, like, our
Mhm.
current circumstances. Um, I
Totally.
don't know, Penny, like, for you, like, did it make you think about, like, choices you'd made in your life to be, like, who you are in the way that, like, Flacco had these decisions too? I mean, because it definitely made me think about the decisions that I've made to either suppress my wild side or, do certain things to fit in or make decisions about that are risky with, like,
Mhm.
risky high reward or safe low
So
reward. It's
mhm.
I don't know. I felt like the Flacco story is like a great sort of practice for
I'm glad
for
you felt that
humans.
way. I felt the same way. I mean, also, like, so he appeared on that sidewalk in 2023, February of 2023. So it wasn't like during the pandemic, but it certainly
Yeah.
was with the pandemic a lot closer to our lived experiences than it is now. It felt like a pandemic story at the beginning, like that he was this kind of like out of shape, sort of like studio apartment dweller that had been like set free into this like wild world. So I do think people saw a lot of parallels there, like how we dealt with the risks of the pandemic and like what kind of choices we made to like I was alone during in a studio apartment, single during the pandemic. I don't know what your pandemic was like, but that was mine. And there was like a year, almost a whole year, where like I didn't touch another human being. And so, I remember getting a hug from someone and just bursting into tears and realizing that I had like not touched another human. And it really makes you understand like what life is all about when you're
Yeah.
denied the basic things. So owls are pretty they're not like pack animals, right? So Flacco probably wasn't lonely in the same way that I would be in my studio apartment. But he did, want to mate. Like that was, his version of like needing a hug, and he was never going to get one. I found that so heartbreaking.
Okay, but I think that's really interesting, everything you just said about it being a pandemic story, but you didn't really talk that much about the pandemic in the movie. Like,
No,
you
no.
didn't.
And it wasn't a pandemic story really, but it was like I said, it was so
Right.
recently in our back
Yeah.
rearview mirror at that time that it felt connected for sure.
But it also seems like, I mean, this is sort of like taking a step back from just your film. It's kind of interesting that there really has been very little art or discussion about the pandemic. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, yeah,
We just don't want to think about it again.
no.
Yeah.
I don't wanna see
Um,
those stupid masks. I don't wanna, like, have to, like
I know. Yeah, it's interesting to have this collective experience that we also collectively want to forget.
Yeah, it was painful. I mean, it's so interesting to think about how we're gonna look back on that period, but yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone's super interested yet in, like, reliving it per se.
No, no. Okay,
At
so
least leaving it out of the movie, even though there had been some commentary about the pandemic early on.
yeah, yeah. I feel like for us, the audience right now, we don't need that pandemic context. But
Right.
like for people who watch the film, like in the future, like they might not even know.
Mhm. Or they might clock a few masks in there and be like, "Aha, I'm now
Oh,
connecting this to that period of time." I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. So talk to me about the film's release because I know you're doing how many cities? 50?
Right now, we're at about 50 bookings across America, and we're adding more all the time. And they're on being updated on flaccodocumentary.com if anyone's interested to see where it's playing. And you can like sign up or you can request a screening if you want to have one near you and you don't see one. That actually really does help the booker to like make a case to a local theater. Like, look, 6 people said they wanted to see it in like whatever city. So that can be helpful. So we're doing that, and we're also kicking off all of that with our world premiere in Central Park, which is such a dream come true because it's like really where the film was made
Yeah.
was 90% in Central Park, and it's where Flacco spent 90% of his time in New York. And so we're doing a world premiere screening for free on the Great Hill in Central Park on July 29th, and then 2 days later
Oh,
we
wow.
yes. So world premiere and then free event, big open lawn. And then a couple days later we'll be at IFC Center and then we'll roll out into theaters across the country.
That's great. I mean, it's very rare to hear about a documentary doing well, I guess it's more and more common to hear about documentaries doing their own theatrical runs. Like, talk to me about why for this particular film you're doing this theatrical run.
I mean, I just think I believe in the theatrical experience.
Yeah.
I've waffled. There have been some Substacks I wrote over the last 6 months where I've been like, how much do I care about this? Like, should I throw in the towel? Like, am I just a content creator? Like, should I just become a YouTuber? Like, how much do I really care about theatrical documentary? And I think I've just decided that I really do care about theatrical documentary. And I really like want people to get together and like watch films together in community. I think it's like really good for our souls. I think it's good for our communities. I think it's good for the movies. It's also directly good for this film to like, sort of get the next one made and like make another film that you can put in theaters, like for people to show up makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. But also I think we just knew that this movie was kind of like it just has, like, a lot of appeal, Like, when we
Mhm.
dropped the trailer on Instagram about a month ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago, not even that long ago, we dropped the trailer on Instagram, and we have 1,000,000 views, and that's, like,
That's amazing.
organic reach, like, not paid? And so we're gonna start doing paid, but, this million was, like, actually 1,000,000 human beings were like, "I wanna watch this trailer," and, like, 80,000 people, like, shared it, liked it, downloaded it, saved it, whatever, and it was just, like, the engagement was exactly what I thought, which was, like, this movie has, like, legs, like, I think
Yeah.
audiences are gonna like this movie. I think it's an audience-friendly movie. It's entertaining, it's, like, got a great central hook, like, the owl is so handsome, I'll never have a more handsome main character. You can't help it, you fall in love with him, you root for him, and it becomes this kind of, like, epic chorus of this, scene of New York City. So, we just thought it had, like, legs in that way, that audiences would like it, and that, we put a ton of effort into, like, making it look and feel and sound cinematic, and so let's put it in theaters. That was kind of the idea.
Yeah, and I mean, it also just echoes the theme of the film, which is, this community was created around Flacco, and now you're creating a community around the film.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's, like, really cool to see. Again, even with just the trailer, like, sort of just seeing all these new people. Like, and you forget when you're doing your docs, you know this, you start to feel like everyone knows the story already because you know
yeah,
it, like, everyone
yeah,
knows it, and, like, even if they didn't,
yeah.
you already told them. So it's, like, such an amazing moment when you release the film and people find out they meet your story for the first time. And we
Mhm.
just have such a good trailer that I just think people are like, "Oh my god, like, what? How did I never hear of this?" And it's been so fun. People are, like, arguing in the comments about, like, animal rights and zoos and whether or not he should have been captured, and I was just like, "This is amazing." Like, the story is gaining new legs. Like, he's about to have, like, so many more fans than he already has.
There's also something, as someone who obviously has watched a lot of documentaries for, like,
Yeah.
way too many years, you have an actual story, Penny. Like,
Yeah, an
this is
actual
not
story.
common in documentary.
Yeah, it's not a topic, it's a story with a protagonist, with, like, an
Yeah,
actual protagonist
who changes,
who
and
changes.
you wanna
Right,
know
that's
as
funny,
I was watching,
that's
I
funny.
didn't remember the end, and so as I was watching, I was like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen? What's gonna
Oh,
happen?"
I
And,
love that you
you
didn't.
know and my 12-year-old, I told him I was gonna watch it, and I was like, "Do you wanna watch it?" And he was like, I don't know." But he watched the whole thing, he loved it. Like,
He's like,
it has.
"Documentaries."
Yeah, I mean, also, poor kid has had to watch a lot of bad documentaries.
Documentaries,
He
yeah.
screens things with me sometimes, he's like, "Oh, wow." But I was like, "No, this is, like,
Oh,
a
I'm
real
so
movie."
glad he liked it. That's a good
Yeah,
engagement.
but I think this is, like, interesting to talk about is and really sort of circle is, like, okay, you have a documentary that's a story about a central character, something happens. Yeah,
In
of
a
course,
in
there's,
a
like.
cool location, Central
Yeah,
Park, New York
yeah,
City.
exactly. It's like a fiction film. Of
Yeah,
course, there's issues that come up, but, like, I oftentimes think a reason why a lot of documentaries struggle is because they're about a topic or they're a
right,
profile of a person, which, I mean,
right.
obviously, you can make a film like Kenny G's profile, but
Mhm.
you can make a profile good, but it takes a lot of fucking work. Like, was this
Yeah,
movie,
and
like,
it's not
easier to
boring.
make? Because was it
Uh,
easier to make because it had this amazing
no.
plot?
No, it's
Okay,
super hard, actually. They're all hard.
okay.
But I will say I did think that the appeal of it was easier to
Yeah,
explain to people. I thought it might be easier to market this movie than some of my other
yeah.
movies. Like, so, like, there's that part of it for sure that I felt very confident about, but it was actually super hard to make. It was, like, one of the biggest producing challenges of my life to make this movie
Why? Can you say,
because
like, what some of the
yeah,
sticking points were?
let me try to explain it. You tell me if this is interesting and I can, like, try to make it sharper, but, like, the movie is very crowdsourced. It's not
Yeah.
super obvious from watching it how little of that footage of Flacco is from, like, Penny Lane's crew. It's
Mhm.
very little. Like, it's, like, 3 shots or something out of, like, whatever it is, like, 1,000. And so I knew from the beginning that we could crowdsource the movie because I know the birding scene. I'm a birder. I knew that there'd be this paparazzi. I knew that there'd be tons and tons and tons. Within a month, he was already the most documented owl in history. So that was like a no brainer. Like I knew that I could use this archival approach. But they only shoot close up portraits of the owl. There's never an establishing shot. There's no wide. They never like point the camera at the other birders or show where are they in the world. It's just a close up of an owl in a tree or a close up of an owl on a bench or whatever. And so the challenge of the film, and because we told the story over the course of one calendar year, and I really wanted the feeling of that year, the seasons passing, now it's spring, now it's summer, people are taking their shirts off, and now it's fall, and everyone's got their sweaters and the colors are changing. It was really about like going back and like filling in via really recreation
Mhm.
everything that didn't get shot that first time around, because
Yeah.
everything that shot the first time around was just the owl, and I did my best to chase them around, but we didn't get our funding in until pretty late in the year, and so it was the next calendar year that we were like, "Okay, we have this amazing footage of Flacco, like, in the snow. Now we need to wait for a snowy day and then figure out, like, what's the reverse angle, what's the wide," like, really
Mhm.
making it feel, which I hope feels that way, that
Yeah,
we were.
no, it totally works.
Yeah, yeah, like, it feels like we were there the whole time because of the incredible, massive producing that Gabriel and Nick and Julia did on this project. I mean, it was just by far the biggest producing challenge we've ever had. Like, it was so hard to to
That's so
match
interesting. It sounds like a
to match.
math problem.
It was absolutely a math problem. It broke my brain many times where I was like, you're like, or like, even think about this. Like, you're like, it is February. Like, the calendar says February, but it's like the grass is already green and it's not snowing. And you're like, okay, well, maybe we need to shoot that next December to make it like, there was like a lot of trickery that had to go into it that I hope doesn't make it sound like it's not a real documentary. Your sophisticated audience understands what I'm saying. But I worry
Well,
about
everyone
the public.
listen. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was re-watching the interview that we did a couple months ago, so if people wanna go deep into Penny's thoughts on truth and documentary, look up the last Substack we did because we talked about it a
A
lot.
lot, yeah, yeah, and so, yeah, there was a lot of, creative kind of recreation type stuff that, like, doesn't
Mhm.
read as such. I think it just reads as if we were doing a ride along, like, we just happened to be there, but
Yeah.
we were not. It was a lot of, like, post hoc reconstruction.
Well, like, what you said in that interview was you said you don't like to use the word truth, you like to use the word accuracy.
Yeah, it was very accurate what we did, but, like, a lot of fakery goes into creating that accurate picture.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's such an important lesson that you learn when you make these docs is how
Yeah,
much you
I I
how much
love
you have to.
but listen, I love that you were like, "Was it easier?" And that makes me feel good because, like, you want it to look easy, even if it was actually one of the hardest movies you ever made. You don't want it to feel like that when you're watching it, that's for sure.
Well, I feel like usually with documentaries, the challenge is to find a story, right? Like, you
Right,
have a
right.
topic, you
You
have
have
an
the
issue,
topic, and then you're, like, trying to
you have
find
some
a
interesting
character.
thing, an interesting
Yes.
world, you know?
Yes, and in
Like
fact, that's interesting because, one of the reasons that I was, like, so certain that this movie was, like, destined like, I was destined to make this movie. I don't even, like, believe in stuff like that, but I still feel like I was, like, destined to make this movie. This was, like, my movie to make the minute he, like, showed up in that sidewalk or as soon as I realized that he was transforming before our eyes, was that I had been trying to find a bird-related project for probably 10 years at that point, right? Where I was like,
interesting.
"I'm really into birds, I love birds, I want to bring the joy of birds to more people, birding's so interesting, the science," like, I was kind of like, "Oh, this topic is interesting," but I didn't have
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
here comes this, like, charismatic, sort of story with an incredibly beautiful main character. This whole story would not have played out the way it did if Flacco were a less beautiful species of owl.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, like, the most magnificent creature. He's huge, his 6.5-foot wingspan, like, those beautiful pumpkin orange eyes. I love all birds, but many owls are kind of scary looking, and, like, I don't think people would have reacted the same way to, like, a creepy barn owl with, like, the black eyes. He was so cute, He's such a handsome guy that, it really helped. So
Well, yeah, it's a moment of synchronicity.
for sure.
Everything aligned and you paid attention to the signs. This is something I'm really into. Actually, alongside this interview, I'm going to post a podcast about it because there's something really important that goes on in life when you see when like things start to line up that if you
Totally.
really pay attention, you end up making a movie like Flacco, guys. It's all about synchronicity in life.
Yes, yes, yes. When it was happening, we were too busy to work on this. Like it was like really hard. Like
Mhm.
now I'm like, oh wow, I'm wildly unemployed. Like for the love of God, drop a project into my lap. But at that moment, we had like way too much to do. Like Gabriel and I walked into his office, my business partner and producer, literally in tears because I was like, we need to work on this. I know we don't have time, but we have to. Like it was like this, like I had to. It was like a there's no question here, you know? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like it turned out, and I'm so happy for you that you have another amazing film for
Thank
us
you.
all
My
to watch and enjoy.
My eighth feature doc.
Wow.
Not
Wow.
a
And
sexy number, but it's pretty impressive actually.
hey, you know what? 8 is actually my lucky number.
All
So,
right.
and
All right.
8
Then
is
I
also
don't have a lucky number. I'm gonna make 8 my lucky number too.
it's also the symbol for infinity.
Great. We're going with 8.
8. Yeah, exactly. 8's a good
Mhm.
number. So
I'm like
this is
writing it down. Like I've like made a note.
it's all aligning. It's all aligning, Penny. All the signs are there.
I love
But
it.
yeah, I really think that yeah, the doc nerd in me is like, finally a doc with a story. Let's see how no, just because like a lot of the
Uh,
films that I love and I've even made, we had to find the story and the
yeah.
topic and the
Yes.
character.
Absolutely.
And I think that my hypothesis that I'm going to track with this film is really how this film does with audiences, given
Mhm.
that you have a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. And
Yeah.
I think for
Non-human main character, but, you know, main character. We'll see how that goes.
okay, but I honestly think that okay, content with animals does the best. I
Yes.
posted a picture of my dog on my Instagram. I never got so many likes on any post in my life.
That makes me happy.
I mean,
I just got a note in because I was asking people what I should say about this, and I now have an answer for you. So, you were
okay.
asking before about the HBO of it all because
Yeah.
I was like, "I wanna tell people they have to come see it in theaters because they're gonna think it's, like, gonna be on HBO tomorrow, but it's not gonna be HBO tomorrow. It's not gonna be HBO until it's not set yet, but I've been given permission to say it's looking like February 2027. So I just want to be clear that even though we've trained our brains in the streaming era to think, oh, that movie's in theaters, it's probably going to be on Netflix in 2 weeks, it is not going to be on HBO in 2 weeks. It will be on HBO in like 6 months. So if people want to see this movie, they have to come to the theater. It is truly the only way to see it for the foreseeable future. Just letting you know. 'Cause
And
HBO's logo is right there in the trailer, so I don't
yeah.
want people to be confused by that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that, when people come together, we have these things called mirror neurons. And so if we're in a room with people feeling things, it's just reinforced by everyone else feeling the same thing. So it's just like
Catharsis, people.
biologically
Yes,
a
I
different
cannot wait.
experience.
Yeah, I cannot wait to sit in these theaters with these people seeing this story for the first time, like, it really is it's an incredible story, it really is. It has, like, very big twists and turns that you won't see coming.
Well, I know you have to go because you have a lot
A
to do.
full day of
A
press.
full day of press
Thank
to
you for
get
being
people
my
to
first
support.
stop on my 2nd day of press for Wild Inside.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you about it, Penny. Let's keep talking about this movie and all the work that we do in documentaries so that we can hopefully keep doing it for another decade,
We're gonna keep doing it for another decade, at least another 8.
at least. Yeah. Yeah. Another 8 decades.
I wanted to say hi to a couple other people. Hi,
Oh, yeah.
Pieware. So nice to see that you're here. I already said hi Alex Daly. Hi, Alex. Hi, Holly. Just saying hi. Gotta run.
Okay. And I just want to say I can't say hi to anyone because I can't see any of the comments. I
Yeah,
can't see who's
probably a
in the
lot of these.
chat.
Yeah, I've told you, Substack Live is like a wreck right now. It's
Yeah.
like
On
send a letter of complaint, please, because we
on
got.
my end, it says air going live. So I'm just
You're like up this whole time. You're like, are we live?
is
I
this
promise.
happening? Is
I
this
promise
being
we're live.
recorded? I'm just hoping the video gets recorded so I can, like, post it later. So, Penny, please
Listen,
You
Substack
see what happens
Live,
on your
the
end.
magic of Substack Live is you never know what kind of glitches are gonna happen.
So the people watching it live, you guys may be the only people that will ever see this.
That's why we do it.
Well, good luck with
Good
the
to
film.
see you. Thank
Nice to
you.
see
Thanks
you.
again for this. Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye.